Model of Mysticism as Philosophical Progress. Making inner orientation intelligible. Philosophy has long struggled with the inner world. There are dimensions of human experience that are deeply real to the person who undergoes them, but difficult to explain from the outside. Grief, silence, longing, mystical experience, inner orientation, the feeling that something matters, even before it can be put into words. Wittgenstein famously wrote that what we cannot speak of, we must pass over in silence. One interpretation is that the deepest inner dimensions of life cannot become proper objects of public knowledge. They cannot be fully translated. They cannot be fully verified. They cannot be fully spoken. The model of mysticism accepts this boundary, but it does not stop there. does not claim to expose the inner world completely. It does not turn mystical experience into doctrine. It does not convert inner resonance into truth. It does not inflate silence into authority. Instead, makes a different philosophical move. It shifts the question from hidden content to intelligible structure. Rather than asking what exactly happened inside the person, it asks, how is attention organized? How is identity being affected? What emotion is shaping the field? What narrative is forming? What is happening in the body? What symbols are mediating the experience? What kind of knowing is being claimed, suspended, or intensified? This is the philosophical progress of It makes inner orientation intelligible without pretending to fully translate it. It gives structure to what would otherwise remain vague, private, mystical, or inaccessible. Stands at the boundary between silence and interpretation. It recognizes that some meaning should not be forced into speech too quickly. It recognizes that over-explanation can damage inner life. It recognizes that silence may be protective. But it also shows that silence does not have to mean unintelligibility. We may not be able to say everything about the inner world, but we can understand the conditions under which inner meaning becomes strained, stabilized, symbolized, inflated, or over-translated. This is why matters philosophically. It belongs partly to phenomenology, because it studies lived experience. It belongs partly to hermeneutics, because it studies interpretation. It belongs partly to semiotics, because it studies signs and symbols. It belongs partly to philosophy of mind, because it studies attention, identity, affect, cognition, embodiment, and knowing. It belongs partly to ethics because it asks how inner life should be approached without coercion, ridicule, inflation, or premature exposure. But is not identical to any of these fields. Its distinctive contribution is this. is a structural philosophy of inner orientation under interpretive pressure. Applied extends this into practice. It asks not only what does this mean, it asks, am I stable enough to interpret this? Is this meaning being over-translated? Is symbolic intensity being mistaken for truth? Is silence more appropriate than explanation? Is restraint needed before interpretation? This turns philosophy into a stabilizing discipline, not therapy, not religion, not metaphysical certainty, not self-help, but philosophical intelligence applied to the inner life. The model of mysticism therefore represents progress because it does not abandon the inner world to silence, confusion, pathology, or vague spirituality. It gives inner life a disciplined structure. It protects what cannot be fully spoken, and it makes what can be responsibly understood more intelligible. The inner world cannot always be spoken directly, but it can be approached structurally, ethically, and intelligently. That is the contribution of the model of mysticism. Philosophical Intelligence Institute, a discipline, not a trend, a framework, not an opinion.